think your sound might be all jacked. Hello, everyone.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Now
there we are. Technical difficulties. It's only week 3. Doesn't matter. Welcome in to the Waiver Wire Q&A presented by FanDuel. I am JL, joined this week by my good friend JJ Zachariason. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Only initial boys in this stream today.
Initial boys, initial JL, JJ. We got to get something going with that. Some sort of J related stream. We got Dustin in the chat already saying JL is muted. Classic JL. Yeah. On our morning show, JJ, I get just constantly made fun of for not unmuting.
Yeah, you should be made fun of.
I should. Looks like we're having some issues with Facebook. I'm not sure. I'm not going to debug that while we are on the show. But week 2 is in the books. JJ, how did it go for you this week?
Not the best. I had 2 lineups that I was ready to crush, and I pivoted off of them at like noon on Sunday.
No.
So it was just a very frustrating weekend from just like strictly that perspective. I mean, season long was fine. It's it's a long season, but I think that there's some interesting storylines coming out of the week. I think we learned a lot this past week, which is always big. And I'm ready to answer some questions from folks watching this.
Absolutely. If you got some waiver wire questions, throw them in the chat. We're going to be here every single Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be JJ, and either Simon or I will be here answering your questions all season long. While you're at it, make sure you hit that like button on YouTube. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Follow FanDuel on Twitch, TikTok, all these things. They have amazing, talented content creators putting stuff out all the time. So make sure you are tuned in, locked in. We already got some questions coming in here. JJ, we got Mr. Guy Name who's saying, what's up? What's up, Mr. Guy Name? Great name. Love it. Server Dude asking, would you use your number 1 waiver priority on Garrett Wilson? My wide receivers are Mike Williams, Drake London, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, and Kadarius Toney. Number 1 waiver wire, is it worth using that for Garrett Wilson, JJ?
So here's my general stance. So number 1, like I'm a big Elijah Moore guy. Like I think Elijah Moore is a stud and all that. So understand that when I'm saying this. Garrett Wilson, he ranked in the 97th percentile in my prospect model. Anything over the 95th percentile is usually a very, very good sign. Only Chris Olave and Drake London ranked ahead of Garrett Wilson in that model entering the league for them. Here's my general stance, though. Given that I love Elijah Moore and knowing that, I'm still saying that you should do what you can to get Garrett Wilson, because very rarely do you have opportunities to get such a talent on the waiver wire. And there's a chance that this is a league-winning type situation at wide receiver. And even though, these wide receivers are fine, Mike Williams, Drake London, I think Drake London is going to be a wide receiver too. From here on out for the most, but maybe like a mid to low end one. Juju is still good. Chris Olave just had a monster game from an air yards perspective last week. He had over 300 air yards, which was absolutely insane. And then you get these stashes, perfect kind of guys to stash in Treylon Burks and Kadarius Toney. I understand you might not absolutely have this need at wide receiver, but again, very rarely do we have these situations where we can add a stud like this. We know the talent is there, and he's going to be seeing work. He's going to leapfrog Corey Davis in terms of snaps any minute now. He ran the same number of routes this past week, so it doesn't really matter even from that perspective. And I think that there is a very real chance now that we've seen him play and we're seeing this kind of come to fruition that Wilson's better than Elijah Moore, which is saying something, because Elijah Moore is very, very good as well. Like a very, very good wide receiver. These are 2 legitimate studs in their offense in Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. I think it's worth it to spend that top waiver priority. I actually think that it's not a bad idea to trade for Garrett Wilson after waivers run. You might see it as a buy high moment, and this might be the best week that he has all season. That's very, very possible. But all the research I've done says that rookie wide receivers in redraft leagues are generally way undervalued, and they do a lot better during the second half of the season, during the rookie season, than they do the front half. You don't want to miss out on if this is a Justin Jefferson type situation. Right. I'm not saying that that's a probable outcome here, but you don't want to miss out on that whenever the alternative is, a Jeff Wilson type that you're probably going to see week in and week out. If that, we probably not even going to see a Jeff Wilson type most weeks. So I think using that number 1 priority on Garrett Wilson is a good idea. And I would also be buying Garrett Wilson right now.
So you mentioned the other rookie wide receivers. You don't want Garrett Wilson to be that. You don't want to get left behind essentially if Garrett
Right.
Wilson does pop off. Is he, even though it might not be the most likely outcome, is he in that top range of outcomes regarding like the other rookie wide receivers in terms of breaking out this year?
Like the from this class, you mean?
Yeah, from this class.
I think Drake London is the guy that you should prioritize over Garrett Wilson right now. London has shown us already through 2 games that he's probably a stud, and
Yeah.
you know he looked better in my prospect model than Garrett Wilson did. So I think going that direction makes more sense, but I do think that Wilson has to be the 2 right now, and then Chris Olave probably the 3. And don't sleep on Olave either. Olave and my 15 transactions podcast that I do each week. Olave was a buy after what we saw this past week. He had a 32.5% target share. He had 13 targets. He had all these deep targets. He's leading the NFL in air yards per game. I mean, he's going to pop off eventually. It's going to connect.
Right.
So I do think that he's a buy, but I also think that Garrett Wilson's a buy. You should be buying into rookie wide receivers.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. Mr. Guy name asking, need a QB after losing Trey Lance. Yes, Trey Lance went down, broken ankle in I believe the second drive of this game this past week. Very sad, very disappointing. Mr. Guy name needs to pick someone up. Tua Tagovailoa, Marcus Mariota, or Jared Goff. Which of these 3 guys are you prioritizing to pick up?
Yeah, look, I think this week I like Goff the most against Minnesota. I was just doing my quarterback rankings before we hopped on. So I do have Goff ahead of the other 2 because Tua does get Buffalo. But I think Tua even against Buffalo can be fine. I mean, he's got the weapons. That game is a high over-under. He should be fine. I think Tua of these 3 has the best season-long upside. So, you might take a slight hit this week, but from a projection standpoint, it's not like Goff and Tua, the projection is like that far off, even if they're like 4 or 5 spots different in terms of ranking this week. So I would pick up Tua because I think his season-long outlook is the most favorable there.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Tua really stands out amongst the other guys. I would put Mariota and Goff more in like a tier together. Tua to me stands out above those guys. And we got a couple questions in here from about Jordan Mason. So I'll stick with one. Thoughts on Jordan Mason this week with Tyrion Davis-Price being out with a high ankle sprain?
Yeah, look, I mean, like the thing is everyone sees this as like, oh, it's only Jeff Wilson, then he has to leapfrog in order to see a lot of work. It's also Deebo Samuel. Like that's a huge problem. Like I don't think that adding Jordan Mason is this like terrible idea, but the chance that Jordan Mason like is this like legit league winner, plug and play RB2. I mean, even Elijah, I said this last week with Simon, like even Elijah Mitchell wasn't going to be more than an RB2 this year, more than likely. I mean, it just, right. This offense isn't really set up for that. I do think that they're in a little bit better of a spot with Jimmy Garoppolo than with Trey Lance, because Trey Lance would steal some of those looks at the goal line. The target share for the running backs might not be as high with a guy like Trey Lance versus Garoppolo. Mason's fine as a speculative ad. I think that Jeff Wilson truly is the now RB1. And then Jordan Mason would be the RB2, yes. But Deebo's there, and Elijah Mitchell's going to be back eventually. So this isn't even like a season-long thing. So sure, if you have a deep enough roster, what have you, you can add Jordan Mason. I would not be spending a significant amount of FOB on him, though.
Yeah, like the paths to relevancy are pretty slim for him.
Yeah.
It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when Shanahan was using a guy, even dealing with all these injuries the last few years, he really did focus on this one guy mainly, at least for fantasy purposes. Like he wasn't really, spreading the ball around. So it makes a ton of sense. We got Scriven here saying, would y'all trade Waddle for Kamara and Thielen? So Jalen Waddle, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, for Kamara and Thielen. What do you think about that trade, JJ?
I'd probably do it. Yeah. I mean, I think I have Kamara straight up ranked higher than Waddle right now in my rest of season rankings. It's not that I don't like Waddle. It's just that you're clearly selling Waddle off of, arguably, it's probably going to be his best game of the season. Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's definitely a downside with Alvin Kamara right now. I mean, we don't know what this injury, how long it's going to be there with him. We don't know what his workload's really going to look like when he's healthy and in this offense and all of that. But, we have a lot of evidence that he's a pretty good fantasy asset. And in most formats, running backs are going to get the edge. Having an elite running back is going to give you a little bit better of an edge than having an elite wide receiver. So I would take that side. You're getting Thielen too. I mean, I think Waddle for Kamara straight up is not a bad trade. So you're getting Thielen. So I'd take the 2.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at where you drafted these guys, you're getting a ton of draft value, right? You probably drafted Kamara in the 2nd round, Waddle in like the 3rd or 4th round, and then Thielen, 7th, 8th round. So definitely good value on a quick turnaround. But I would make this trade depending on team context. So if you're 0-2, you're starting off your season 0-2. I'm probably not going to take this trade because there's just a little too much risk with Kamara and Thielen, seeing how Thielen settles into that new offense that he's in. And Kamara, obviously has the injury risk, the off the field issues, the legal issues. So definitely risk, but otherwise, like in a vacuum, I think I would take the value, the Kamara and Thielen value. I'm with you. RG asks, so this is similar to our last question with Trey Lance being out, and Tua, talking about Tua. Are you picking up Tua and starting him every week versus streaming a quarterback every week based off matchups, JJ?
I think what I would do is assume that I'm going week by week, but I would try to get a player who I think has the most season-long upside, who I could plug and play, and that would be Tua. I don't think, in situations like this, because we get asked this like all the time, where it's like, I need to find this plug and play you don't need to do that. I'm not saying go stream. I'm saying that you can balance this notion of playing a quarterback in a decent enough matchup, maybe take a slight hit. Like I said earlier, I do have Goff ahead of Tua right now. That might even change, as the week goes on and I study this stuff more. But, even if there's a slight hit in terms of projection, in terms of ranking or whatever for this one singular week, Tua absolutely has more upside season long. So if you want to add Tua this week and play him over someone like Goff, over some of these other guys that might be on your waiver wire that are ranked higher than Tua because of this matchup, if you want to still get Tua, I think it's totally fine. So of the guys on your waiver wire, this goes for probably anyone listening to this, of the reasonable players that are sitting on your waiver wire, Tua is probably the one that would be out there that has the most upside of being a true plug and play quarterback.
Right. Yeah. That's probably on your waiver wires, right? At this point.
Right.
Totally fair. We got a good one here. This has been a hot topic on our morning show. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Are you buying into Logan Thomas? Is he a value right now? Is he someone you should be buying into? Michael asks, do you like his peripherals in that offense, or would you prefer someone like Gerald Everett on the Chargers offense?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Logan Thomas is he's probably at best going to be the number 4 option in the Washington offense. And I think the Washington offense in general is a little bit inflated given the fact that they played Jacksonville and Detroit to start the season, 2 teams that, teams should be able to beat offensively this year. So, right. Logan Thomas still only has a 13% target share in the offense. I think he's a higher end streamer for sure. But Gerald Everett, I think, could end up being this year's late round tight end. Like he could be the dude that you are plugging and playing right now. I mean, like this past week, I had him ranked as a top 10 tight end against Kansas City. And so, I think we're going to continue to probably see that. I would much rather have Gerald Everett than Logan Thomas right now.
I think I would too. I think I would too. Coop, who's my co-host on that morning show, has been talking up Logan Thomas and all the underlying usage stats. I just think there's a lot of mouths to feed there. I think it's going to be his upside is going to be limited compared to someone like Everett.
Yeah.
RG asking, have Waddle and Amon-Ra St. Brown thoughts on stacking with Jared Goff or Tua? So I guess of these two, JJ, which would you rather stack? Is that too obvious of an answer?
Yeah, I mean, like again, I would say that so number one, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked ahead of Waddle rest of season moving forward. I think Amon-Ra is a stud. He could be this year's Cooper Kupp. If we're looking at just like guys who, you got in those like running back dead zone, maybe a little bit later kind of area of the draft who could really exceed expectation. And then again, I like Goff more than Tua this week in particular. So I guess that would be who I would stack if that's what the stacking question
is for this week, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Jonathan asking, I have Herbert, and do you guys think he'll be ready to go this week? Or if not, what QB do you think they should get? So if do you think Herbert's going to play this week, JJ? And if not, who are you going to be trying to target on the waiver wire? Apart, maybe it's already who you already said, Tua and these other guys on the waiver. But how do you feel about Herbert this week?
I mean, it sounds like it's a pain management thing for Herbert, so hopefully he does end up going. It depends on how the week progresses. We don't know. I mean, you right now, Jonathan, have just as much of an idea as we do with whether or not he's going to go. I would lean yes, because there hasn't been any like negativity around it, but so I would expect Herbert to go. But if you need an alternative this week from like a streaming perspective, Jared Goff, I think is a great option against Minnesota. If you want to dig a little bit deeper, I don't mind Marcus Mariota against Seattle either, just given the fact that he's seeing so many. I mean, he's third in the NFL in rushing yards right now at the quarterback position.
Yeah. He's going to be great if he does play. Sean asking should you use the waiver claim number 1 spot for Brian Robinson in a league? Are you using it for Brian Robinson?
I think Robinson's a good like speculative ad right now, but I would not use my top claim on him if especially if it doesn't reset each week. I mean, if it resets each week, that's a little bit different. I don't know who's on your waiver wire. I do think I do think that Antonio Gibson is a sell right now. And it's not just because of Brian Robinson, it's because of the opponents they've faced, the game scripts they've seen, and when they've hit negative game scripts, we like with this past week, we saw JD McKissic steal a lot of work through the air. So I do think that Gibson's a sell, and I do think that Robinson should be added. But do I think that he should be added over a Garrett Wilson? Do I think that he should be, the number 1 claim? No, I would still much rather have a guy like Garrett Wilson than Brian Robinson this year.
Are there any top names that are similar to Garrett Wilson that you're targeting this week?
I think Wilson's like the clear cut. I can look at my rest of season rankings. It's probably easier that way. But I think Wilson is the clear cut kind of go to. Like right now, I have Garrett Wilson basically back to back in my rest of season rankings to DK Metcalf. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, I mean, Metcalf, clearly there's an issue with the offense and the situation, and Geno Smith. The opposite thing is happening. You have an ascending talent in Garrett Wilson. Like, I think that that's the kind of flip that you can make. And that's like sort of where we're at. We're at like, in that low end wide receiver 3, mid wide receiver 3. But during the second half of the season, I would expect him to get even better. I mean, it's just the way that this generally goes. So,
right.
For rookie wide receivers. So again, like I think that the way people are viewing Garrett Wilson is it's not like strong enough. Like people need to really look at Wilson as a potential down the stretch wide receiver 2 in fantasy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm super excited for Garrett Wilson. Honestly, this Jets offense this Jets team feels like they've taken a step up in the offseason. And I know that like they've kind of had some issues early on in this season, but it feels like a lot of that has to do with injury. You think the Jets might take a step up from going into next season?
I mean, hopefully Zach Wilson's able to come back and like be strong and be solid. I know Flacco, I mean, they've thrown the most passes in the league so far this year. Actually, I looked at it today, they've thrown 3.7 times the number of passes this year as the Bears have.
Wow.
They're at 104 pass attempts to the Bears 28 so far this year.
Wow.
So they've thrown the most pass attempts because they're going to be in these negative game scripts. That's really, really good for these pass catchers.
Absolutely. We got Cy Claw in here saying, do we need to be in YouTube chat to submit questions? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Hopefully this proves it to you because there you are, Jim Halpert, right up on our screen. We're taking questions. Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. That's where we are streaming right now. Throw in your waiver wire, your week 3 waiver wire questions. We do our best to get to it. Real quick, JJ, Chris has a question for us. Who's better kickball player, CD Carter, Denny Carter, or Evan Silva?
Kickball player. I would assume, Silva's probably got a boot, man. I would assume Silva's.
Have you played kickball with these guys?
I've never played with either of them, so I have no idea.
And he's more of a golfer. I feel like he's more of like an upper body type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, Silva would probably slay in some kickball.
Yeah, I'd take Silva. Sorry, Denny. Joseph asking, better to add Eno Benjamin or Jordan Mason? We already touched on Jordan Mason, but we have not touched on Eno Benjamin. I see another question here about Arizona backups. JJ, is Eno the backup you are targeting on the Arizona Cardinals?
So here's the thing. So James Conner has this ankle injury. It sounds like the ankle injury is not that severe, that serious. Maybe he misses this week. I have no idea, but they sound optimistic at least, right? I didn't have either of the Cardinals running backs, no Cardinals running back in my 15 transactions podcast today. And the reason for that is they used a lot of Darrell Williams this past week. And I would expect, honestly, I would probably lean Williams as like the true like handcuff to James Conner, if you will. Like I think he's going to see more of the early down work with Eno Benjamin sprinkled in as playing that Chase Edmonds role that they established when Chase Edmonds was in Arizona. So I'm not really that optimistic that even if James Conner were to miss, that one person would take on a huge workload in that backfield. So that's why I just didn't recommend adding either of them because I just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I'm with you. I'm not adding either of these guys. We got Nick in here asking, is JJ a buy right now? JJ, I think you'd have to recuse yourself from this, but I'll say absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Either that or I don't know if he's talking about Justin Jefferson, but if
could
he's talking
be Justin
about
Jefferson, that makes way more sense.
I'm a sell. Justin Jefferson is always a buy. Yes.
Justin Jefferson, always a buy. Yeah, I feel like if if the question is Justin Jefferson a buy right now? The answer is always yes.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. There is no too high.
Props to Darius Slay, though. He crushed it last night.
He did. He had a really good game. I love how he ran up and gave Harden that ball, the interception ball. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That was awesome. Francis in here asking Kyle Phillips or Jacoby Myers. Half PPR rest of season. I'd have to drop Phillips for Jacoby. What do you think here, JJ?
I mean, here's the honest answer is that you hope that Kyle Phillips ends up being Jacoby Myers, right? Like Phillips saw a great, I love Phillips. He was one of my favorite, low key prospects in this class. Talked about him a lot before the draft. And he's just not in the best spot imaginable. The Titans will run a lot of two wide. He's a slot guy, purely a slot guy. He had a good target share in week 1. Yes, but the Titans aren't going to be a pass heavy team. They don't want to be that way. Neither is New England, but Jacoby Myers is already seeing consistently that high target share, and that's extended from previous seasons. So we have a very large sample of Jacoby Myers being able to do that. I'm going to lean Myers here because I think Myers is basically what you would want Kyle Phillips to build into and be, that super, super solid in PPR wide receiver 3 or 4.
Right. I was just looking at Jacoby Myers. We talked about him this morning. He's got a 29.7% target share in that offense currently. You think that holds up?
Probably not that high, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he finishes the season with a 25% share. I think it's very possible.
Yeah. I mean, in that offense, there's Nelson Aguilar, Jonnu Smith. It's not really the toughest competition.
Yeah.
I'm saying that as someone who would just get wrecked by any of these guys doing anything athletic.
Yeah.
We got Turpin here. Andrew asking, is Mooney anything beyond a bench and borderline drop in 12-team half PPR? So this brings up a good point. Darnell Mooney, JJ, what are you doing with him? Is there brighter days ahead?
Here's the problem: is that they've only thrown the ball 28 times, and Darnell Mooney,
11 last week.
He was great last year. But part of that was because he was seeing such an absurdly high target share in the offense, right? So he was inching closer and closer to a 30% target share last year. This year, he's only at 18%. And I know that it's a small sample size, but we're also working with a new coaching staff and a new offense. And that's a little bit frightening. It's a little bit scary. So I do think that Mooney right now, you absolutely cannot trust him. I would put him on my bench. I wouldn't be trading for him either. I don't really think it's worth trying to buy low at this point because I am just worried about this Chicago Bears offense. It's almost like drafting a 25-year-old rookie wide receiver in the 3rd round to fix your wide receiver problems was a terrible idea.
Yeah. Who could have thunk? Yeah. Who would have thunk? I'm with you. I think I brought up very similar points this morning about this. I don't have a ton of confidence in the offense is going to be able to move. So for Mooney, especially where a lot of people drafted him, it's probably not going to return that value, but we will see. Try and hit some of these quick because we are quickly coming up on it here, JJ. Tunyon or Dawson Knox? I'll assume this week.
I haven't looked at this week yet. I would assume it's probably going to be Dawson Knox over Tunyon. You get a higher scoring offense. I'm not very bullish on the Packers Buccaneers game, which is crazy because of the quarterbacks that are playing. But you have Mike Evans out this week, suspended. The over under in that game is 41 at this point. It's really, really low.
Yeah.
So I would probably just lean Dawson Knox and just cross your fingers that he can find the end zone.
That makes sense. Paul in here saying Derrick Henry, hold or look to dump. Are you worried at all with Derrick Henry's usage?
I mean, I was worried about him entering the season, to be honest. I mean, it's a bad offensive line. They don't use him in hurry up mode on 3rd downs. They use Dontrell Hilliard there. So yeah, I mean, it depends on what you could get for him. I still think he's like a low end RB1, high end RB2, but he's certainly not in that higher end RB1 range, which a lot of people drafted him as this year.
Do you think it shifts and maybe it's closer to what we've seen before, if not fully there?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to see better game scripts, especially than what they saw against Buffalo. There's some brutal games, we gotta, just as fantasy managers, there's going to be games where you just gotta throw it out. Because the Titans aren't going to play Buffalo each week. Buffalo is the most complete team in football, and they can stop the run really well. They can do everything really well. And so it's not shocking that they weren't able to do much offensively against a team like that. But now they get Vegas this week. I don't think. I mean, Derrick Henry is probably going to be a very good play this week. So I guess thinking this through a little bit more, dumping him now is probably not the best idea. I would probably risk it, see if he can have a big blow up Derrick Henry game this week, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, you're realizing that loss, right? As soon as you trade him away,
Right.
right now it's you drafted him probably in the first round, if not
Yeah.
maybe the second round if you were lucky enough for him to fall. And so,
But
man, I don't know what you're gonna get for him.
I'll say this though. I think I put this in my rest of season rankings too, but I would rather, yeah, I do. I would rather have Leonard Fournette than Derrick Henry rest of season. If that gives
Really?
you like a general idea of sort of where I'm at with it, they're like a couple spots away in rest of season rankings, but yeah, like Leonard Fournette's seen amazing usage and he sees pass catching work and passing down work, whereas Derrick Henry doesn't. The offense, I feel more bullish about that one getting better than the Titans offense getting better. Yeah, so like I would rather go the Leonard Fournette. So what you could do if you want to, you could all, because you'd be buying Leonard Fournette low as well. You could package up Derrick Henry to get Leonard Fournette plus right now because of the way that people
And
just
that would
use
be
it.
really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great add value on top of that, which you mentioned your rest of season rankings. By the way, if you are not already, make sure you are going and checking out JJ's site, lateround.com. It is a fantastic resource. His podcast is amazing. You got Discord, rankings. I'm in there so you can hang with me. Make sure you follow it. Fantastic resource. And then you get to see those rest of season rankings instead of just having to hear it secondhand through JJ.
That's right.
Jacob in here asking, how about Jerick McKinnon as an ad? You had Jerick McKinnon?
He's clearly the number 2 in that offense. I do think that if CEH goes down, he's probably the most intriguing back that they have over Isaiah Pacheco. So yeah, I mean, if you have the space to have sort of like a handcuff back there, I think McKinnon's fine.
Is Pacheco are you still holding out hope for Pacheco this year?
I mean, I think he's fine. His cost got really inflated in redraft.
Yeah.
Like it just got out of control for a 7th round pick. And then in dynasty, you know, I'm hoping long term that he'll be able to be something and do something. He has the skill set at least. But CEH looks good to start the year. Jerick McKinnon's works in this offense. We saw that in the playoffs last year. So I'm not really that surprised by how things have gone down. And we have to remember, I mean, Pacheco outplayed and he's playing ahead of Ronald Jones right now because Ronald Jones has been a healthy scratch.
Yeah. I just dropped Ronald Jones in one of my leagues. It was like, good riddance, man. This dude has just tormented me in Dynasty. Him and Rashad Penny. We were wrapping up here. We got another minute or two. Let's hit one more of these, JJ. I want to hit this one because this one is close to my heart. What are you doing with Naji? What are you doing with Naji Harris? If you have Naji Harris, are you trying to replace him or are you just holding him and waiting and seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you can do. I mean, if you can get Leonard Fournette for Naji, like that kind of running back, and I don't like doing same position for same position trades very often because there's a loser in that trade. You're just playing musical chairs. But I do think that Leonard Fournette, is in a better spot rest of season. I mean, it's like the same exact usage in a better offense, like period. Like I don't know why you would prefer Naji over Leonard Fournette at this point when we're seeing Leonard Fournette's workload be exactly, the question mark with Fournette entering the season was, is Rachaad White maybe going to see a little bit more? Well, he's not. I mean, we're seeing that Leonard Fournette is indeed the bell cow. That Steelers offense is a mess, arguably the worst offensive line in the league. I haven't been high on Naji. I wasn't high on him in the offseason. Wasn't high. I mean, I'm just, he's a sell before week 1 in the 15 transactions column and podcast. So I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that I clearly I don't want to buy Naji Harris. So
yeah.
Of the other running backs, I look at my rest of season rankings. You can go wide receiver too. I mean, you can get like a Debo type or a Tyreek type, whatever. But like I would go Nick Chubb. I would actually go Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara. I would go Leonard Fournette. All of those guys over Naji Harris. I just think the situation there in Pittsburgh is just horrific.
Yeah, I'm with you. As sad as it makes me, I'm with you. We gotta temper our expectations. JJ, this is a ton of fun. I appreciate you hopping on here, answering all these waiver questions. This is a blast.
Of course, man. Yeah, it's always a good time. Appreciate everyone for hopping on, and you can check out all my stuff over on, like you said, lateround.com.
Lateround.com. Make sure you check it out. Check out the Patreon. I'm telling you, really good resources. This is draft guide, prospect guide, all fantastic. We are going to be back here next Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, answering all your questions. In the meantime, you can find JJ at Late Round QB. You can find me at FYF John Luke. And make sure that you are subscribed to FanDuel. Subscribe to FanDuel on YouTube. Tons of great content, fantasy football and beyond. Constantly been putting out. TikTok, go follow them. Twitch, go follow them. Twitter, go follow them. FanDuel. You'll see them on your TV all the time. Promise you won't regret it. All right, JJ, you ready to get out of here?
Let's do it.
All right, see you, bro.